Marjot and I having another night's sleep. Both of us feeling pretty good, despite a bit of a mess around here. Generally, things are going really well. We had a good night that night. Planned on doing some cleaning when we got up. See if we could do something about this filthy mess. Even the kitchen was a disaster. I had myself a meal. Then I got back to cleaning. Marjot slept in that day. But I got through all that work. Got some stuff put away. Was laying about in the kitchen. Marjot continued to sleep. And I wished I was in there with her. After that, I ran out. Hauled some stuff in that was laying outside. Fed one of the dogs that was laid up, unable to feed itself. Turns out the dogs are starving due to a lack of food for them around here. We'd have to do something about that. I was crafting, trying to get my skills up so I could make some Bionics. Then I decided to go sit in Cloud Watch. Marjot was hanging out, just enjoying the quiet in the kitchen area. After that, she got to smelting. I got to making coats before I decided we need some more meals. Some ship chunks fell nearby. That'd be good. We could always use more steel. Components weren't going to hurt. Eventually we'd run out. About 7 o'clock, I was off to bed. And Marjot was out, breaking that ship chunk apart, hauling in the stuff from it. As she came back in, transport pod crashed outside. Someone named Romero didn't have long to live. Didn't like to wear clothes, it seemed like. So Marjot decided to get out there and rescue her. Brought her in. Got her tended. I was back up by then, making a bunch of meals for us. Marjot was off to bed. She'd probably sleep in that day. I kept cooking until I felt like we had enough for the time being. And then I started making some packaged survival meals. Eventually we'd need a bunch of them if we were going to move our home somewhere where these aliens maybe couldn't find us. Marjot had a dream of being near the ocean still. Romero decided to pop up. Said she wanted to join us. We ended up giving her some clothes. And some decent clothes at that. And then sending her on her way. We were rather enjoying having just the two of us here. And as much as some company would be welcome once in a while, we sent Romero packing. She stood around, crying by the wall for a while, just making us feel worse. I tried to get the plants in the ground, more rice and cotton to be in order. Marjot worked on smelting. And eventually, Romero figured it out and got out of here. Hopefully them aliens don't get a hold of her. Marjot cleaned and then went to bed, and I was already in bed at that point. She was a little crabby at how fancy our bedroom was. Seems absurd to me, but we'd have to figure something out to keep her happy. I planned on making another duster. Marjot was doing some research by then. And that's what we did for a while. The dogs were starving. Unless we went out and fed them, they didn't have anything to eat at the moment. Marjot took a break to toss some horseshoes. While I kept right on making my coat. And when I got done with that, I decided I'd do some more cooking. Then I used the telescope for a bit. Stare off into space despite it being daytime. And I got back to making dusters once again. One of the dogs had gone down, starving, per usual. Decided we were going to make some kibble for him. I just had to get around to it. Sick of dealing with these dogs. Didn't really want them around anyway. Just going to get themselves killed. Stupid aliens, so you can't get too attached. We went to bed that night. Marjot was feeling a little crabby once again. We decided to move the TV into the room next door, where we had been keeping prisoners and guests and whatnot. And we were going to build a couple chairs as well. We might have to build another little prison room. But oh well. At least Marjot wouldn't think our bedroom was so fancy. I finished making another duster. We both made our own cloth chair to sit in. And they both turned out good, which is nice. Nice place to sit. We're going to have to reorganize our space, maybe claim a little more space. Crops were mushed in against the building. And we were both feeling a little crabby about it. Could probably use this space better. So the chairs were built, the TV was on. Although we were pretty industrious people, sitting around watching TV didn't seem like the most fun for us. There were some deer nearby I decided to hunt. It's high time we got some more meat. It had been a while. So I ran on out with the gun. Got to the business of taking them out. And then we hauled them back in. We got word of a prisoner rescue nearby. Wasn't a lot we were going to do about that at this point. So I kept on cooking. Marjot was carrying in those deer for me. Had some more material. There was a little bit of blood around. Decided I should probably clean that up. And Marjot got back to research. At that time, a couple weird robots showed up trying to kill us. Whistled all the animals inside once again. But we weren't too worried. Our traps were set up, so unless these things are tough as nails, we should be just fine. They did get a hold of one of our alpaca. Couldn't figure out where it was supposed to be, apparently. So after they stepped on one of our traps, they doubled back to see about killing our alpaca. Somehow they knew it was our alpaca, not just a random alpaca. And they both went to town on it. It sounded pretty horrific, but we didn't see it till later. And then those robots came on in, died on our traps. We shot them up a bit, but it didn't seem to do any good. We decided we were gonna butcher that alpaca eventually. For now, we got it tended up. And Marjot was off to bed. I hauled in the alpaca, put it over with the rest of the animals. We'd made some kibble, so there was plenty of food laying around for the dog at this point. And I was off to bed as well. Some chunks of spacecraft fell out of the sky that night. We were both feeling a little crabby yet, sending that last lady on her way, especially after she cried so long, back by our storage room. It's extremely awkward for the two of us. Marjot fed the alpaca, did some cleaning, brought those dead robots in. Then I slept in that day. It was time to rebuild the traps. A bunch of hops had fallen out of the sky about that time. And then we decided we'd gather them up and bring them in. Not sure if they'd really be good for anything. Probably could make beer, but I'm not sure we really had the skills for that. I got word of a traitor around that time. Someone in outer space. So I decided I'd give him a ring. We had all kinds of clothes we didn't want. We had these dogs we didn't want. We sold him the dogs straight away. Bought some components, advanced components. Sold him all the clothes I'd been making for practice. Then netted a bunch of money. We bought a bunch of medicine as well. And about that time, more of them dirty old aliens showed up to kill us. Which meant leaving our medicine in the dirt for the time being, but it was what it was. So of course the fast ones die relatively easily on the traps. We managed to get a couple shots in on one of them. And it wasn't long before they'd all gone down. Per usual. Usually when they get one group of these guys showing up, you know darn well you're going to get another before too long. We decided to get our advanced components and our medicines put away. Seemed like a waste to leave them sitting out in the elements. We'd also bought a game of RimWorld so we'd have something else to do. A little bit of variety in our day. We were looking for some jade so we could build a fancy table. Thus far I didn't have any. I went back and talked to them people more. Decided we were going to buy a bunch of steel. We were short on it. Had been short on it for a long time. And it just didn't make any sense to be running around scrambling when we had the money and they had the steel. So we bought 1,000 of that. Our plants had become blighted, so our crops were going to die. I decided I'd just cut them all out, not replant till the problem was solved. Well, we were both off to bed about that time. 11 p.m. By morning, the entire crop, both the cotton and the rice, covered in blight. We were rebuilding traps, and I was pretty crabby after all the work I'd spent. There was a bunch of repairs to do. Those aliens shoot blood everywhere. Always causes a lot of mess, destruction. So I was working on digging up all the plants. Marjot was working on smelting down steel. For once we had a decent amount. I finished another duster. Marjot was outside, tossing horseshoes once again, before getting back to smelting. And we worked in there for a while, me making coats, her doing smelting before I was off to bed. She decided to get back to research before she came to bed as well. And again, we were both a little crabby about that colonist. We didn't let us stop that, letting us have a good time that night. Some visitors came in about that time with stuff to trade. I was up bright and early, more like dark and early. It was only 3 a.m. Making coats, food. Those people with stuff to trade just walked in and fell asleep right in the dirt. If they had asked, we could have let them take our guest room for the night, but I guess that's not a thing. So I made a bunch of food, and then I went and tossed horseshoes for a bit. Marjot worked on research, and a couple weirdos slept in the dirt nearby. Some people, man. I was getting relatively close, feeling confident, making some bionics, but I wasn't there yet. Marjot was chilling out, watching the moon rise. I was in bed sleeping. All this learning, manipulating, hard work wears a guy out. We decided to make a bunch more stone blocks, so Marjot hauled some in before bed. At least some chunks she did. We were going to see if we could expand our area a little bit. Maybe add some more traps as well. I decided to replant the cotton, replant the rice. Didn't want to get too low on rice. We were starting to get there, so one more round of cotton would probably be the last of those for a while, since we had decent flax gear, extra material laying about as it was. I was chilling out, Marjot was making blocks out of rock chunks. And then I got back to the business, planting rice. It was rainy and foggy outside. Not cold, but not hot. Marjot got done making blocks for the day. Decided to sit in the kitchen and chill out. Combat supplier came by about that time. That'd be an interesting person to trade with. We could get Marjot a decent gun here. One that fired a little faster than what she had already. At some point I might have to go back to a city. See what I can pilfer. Our wealth is getting pretty low once again. We bought a charge rifle and some medicine. And that was about it. And about that time, someone named Isolde showed up. Decided she was going to join us. But after a quick word with that caravan, they decided they'd accept her. So she'd go off with them. And with strength in numbers, they should be relatively safe. Pleasant feeling settled over me about that time. Same time, a bunch of food came out of the sky. And I can't really complain too much about that. I was still making dusters. Marjot had herself a meal. That caravan's making themselves at home inside our place as well, but I guess that's alright. Especially since they're pretty well armed. And we could lock the door. And then we just decided to let it pass. Turns out they think we're friendly, so we might as well keep that going. Trade caravan took off about that time, and we were both working our butts off. I was making a coat. She is still making blocks. I decided to figure out what this game of is about. So I sat down and messed with that for a spell. And Marjot made all the blocks she could. Got back to smelting. I was still making coats. I was asleep. Feeling a little crabby. We'd sent someone on their way again. But that's alright. I'd get over it. When I got up, it's only 4 a.m. I had myself a meal. Finished making yet another coat. And I was thinking maybe one more. I'd have the confidence I need. That pleasant feeling left me about that time as I was tossing horseshoes. And I decided to do some cooking. One of our muffalo came down with the plague about that time. That's something that Marjot could handle, I'm sure. I was cooking meals before making one more duster. And then I got back to that business. It was close. My muffalo wasn't moving too fast. Marjot got it tended. Did a pretty good job for not using anything. We got one of these weird looking big alien dudes coming by as a supplier in space. I could see his face on the little screen. Kind of freaked me out, but seemed like a nice enough cat. They wanted to buy our spear rifle, but they certainly didn't want to give us anywhere near what we paid for it. So, we didn't really have any interaction with them other than chatting a bit. Which is difficult considering their accent. So I was on that last duster. Marjot was doing some research. I decided I better keep the room clean. I was tracking dirt through here. Somebody got in touch with us then about assassinating somebody. Once again, that's not the way we want to live, so we're not going to take that quest today. I went and chilled out. Sitting at the table. Marjot was wearing one of the dusters I made. Not sure that's the best bet. It's not going to stop bullets that well. I was working through, building that last duster. And then I got to the business, working on a bionic eye. See if I could actually have some success at this. I worked for a little while. I was off to bed. Marjot was doing some cleaning, some research. and she was off to bed. She was super excited I'd finally started on the Bionics. We had a little fun that night. And at some point, one of our power lines blew up. Started our kitchen food on fire, what was in our freezer. I had to run out and deal with it, since Marjot don't really care about fires. She just panics, don't know what to do. So I got back to bed after that. Marjot got up and hauled some blocks around. There's a little bit of repair work. And then I got back to the Bionics, and she got back to making rocks. Stone blocks out of chunks anyway. She was tossing horseshoes. I was eating. Making Bionics. This is monumental. I've been headed in this direction for a long time. And if I could finally get this thing to work, I'd finally be able to see again. We'd be right on the road to being the bionic couple here. Once in a while, as I take a walk around, I still wonder whatever became of Kira. And there's still a chance she might show up around here. That's gonna be awkward. But for now, Marjot and I had built a happy little life. With that, I was off to bed once again. Marjot was already sleeping. She was hell-bent, doing some surgery on me straight away before I even woke up in the morning, really. She came and brought me breakfast in bed at 5 a.m. Brought in the materials. And she got to cutting out my eyeball right in our bed. She succeeded, though. And it was weird. I could see an infrared. I could see normal spectrum. I could see heat. I didn't know what was going on. This is going to take some getting used to, but man, I felt more alive than I had in a while. I was running around quick as you could imagine, too. Marjot was making good progress on the research. She was out there visiting one of the cats' graves. Rooster. That was her favorite of the bunch, as it turns out. She decided to do some cleaning after that. And I worked all day, making another eyeball, and then I was off to bed. Marjot did some tidying up in the storage room. We were still going to have to come up with some plans. What to do if a fire started when I was gone. Right now, Marjot and everything we owned could burn to death. I decided I got up about 3 o'clock to work on that eyeball. I'd also make a bunch more meals. I was getting the hang of this game of and it was pretty fun, I must say. I couldn't get enough of it these days. Marjot slept in. When she finally got up, we hung out for a little bit while she had a meal, and then I cooked. When she got back to research. I stayed cooking for a while. We decided we were going to expand out a little bit. Our perimeter wall. And after making a bunch of meals, I got back to working on that eyeball. I made enough fine meals for a handful of days. Marjot researched most of the day. And she was out tossing horseshoes. And I was in bed by then. I could use a little outdoors time, in all honesty. I feel like I've been stuck indoors for days working on these stupid bionic eyeballs. But my skill was there now. I felt confident in it. We had a good night that night. And once again, I got up at an early time. I made another eyeball. And Marjot was hell-bent on installing it in me, even though she was asleep. Somehow she knew. I went to bed. She got up and started working on my eyeball, right as a bunch of those aliens showed up. I was anesthetized, so there wasn't a whole lot I was going to do for this. Good thing the bastards don't go around starting fires. So Marjot worked on my operation. These aliens came screaming in. And once again, the traps took care of them. Now there's typically multiple assaults at a time here. She got my second bionic eye going. Our Muffalo were having a field day walking around in our storage unit. I guess it is what it is. We'd have to tell them not to at some point. And when I finally got up, I had 2 bionic eyes. And I could see the world in ways I'd never thought possible. I was going to be a real sharpshooter at this point, hopefully. I was going to work on getting these traps done with Marjot. That's what we did. Nose to nose building traps. Sure enough, it wasn't long before a few more of them aliens showed up. And we decided we'd see if we could take these ones out before they actually got to our traps. Damn things are pretty resilient though, and they're fast as it gets. Marjot had a charge rifle. Another issue with them, you shoot them and they bleed like crazy, and the blood burns. Well, I kept shooting at it, but didn't do any good. One of them got a hold of me. We walked him inside and our guns cut loose on him. Turns out, 2 people with guns simply can't kill these damn things. So the traps took the other one down, and it was high time I got tended. I think it got a hold of me with its claws, which was most unfortunate. Marjot was hanging out, using the telescope, and I was in bed, healing up a bit. She came on in before too long, used some medicine on me. And she decided something was wrong. She said there was a buzzing in her ear. Someone fell down nearby right out of space. She wasn't hurt too bad. She was clearly stoned. At some point, looked like she'd just get up and leave on her own. So we decided to let that happen. I woke up, I was using the telescope with these bionic eyes, which was pretty crazy. Marjot was working with the Muffalo. And we were working on doing some building, since we wanted to get things expanded a bit. Maybe get some more crops in, maybe separate them a bit. So that if we did get blight, maybe it wouldn't spread so far. So we built doors and walls and traps, and then we disassembled the old stuff. We could reclaim some material there. I was off to bed again. Been a long day. Still recovering from my operations a bit. Marjot kept working though. She was building traps. After she did come to bed, we got a solar flare once again, which means all the power cut out. First we thought the aliens were attacking again. Sometimes those bastards have a way to kill the power. And we took apart the old walls, built some floors, in an attempt to keep fires from spreading once these power lines go nuts on us. Bottom line is we're going to have to put flooring everywhere if we're going to prevent that. Keep anything flammable away from power lines, even if they're buried in walls. So we got that section done. Started doing repairs. Place is a real mess. Takes us days to recover every time this happens. And it might take a little longer in the future since we claim more space. I was laying around getting used to my new eyeballs. Muffalo stepping on my head. Marjot was outside working. Eventually she brought in some milk and got back to research. I was working on the rice once again. And we picked up the blocks we'd left laying around. The bear had killed itself on our trap. And some mechanoids landed right down inside of our home about that time. Nowhere to tell our animals to go. We just had to deal. One of them ended up inside, right where I do my damn cooking. Fortunately, we had guns strewn about, and these guns are no joke. Unfortunately, those guns don't hit us as often as you'd think they might. I was right in the line of fire at one point. So the guns took one down, and between us and the guns, we took the other one down right in the nick of time. And we were going to have a little roof to repair, a little cleaning to do. But otherwise, I think everything worked out all right. Considering those things dropping down on our heads like that could be extremely bad. Neither of us felt like it went that awful. So we tied it up, got stuff put away. I was off to bed once again, about 8 o'clock. Marjot was working with the Muffalo, trying to talk some sense into them, stay tame. If I did go off to a city, I'd certainly need them to come with me. Maybe we take the whole crew this time and just seal up our home. There's a good chance we'd come back to it burnt down, though. We had a good night that night once again, and I was up about midnight. There was work to do, building traps, hauling rice, taking apart those robots. And by 3 a.m. I was tired again, so I went back to bed. Plus I was hoping Marjot might be a little bit awake in there, if you catch my drift. I worked on making another gun. It certainly wouldn't hurt. More chunks of spacecraft fell nearby, and that was good. Since I just made a gun, this will pretty much give us a ton more materials to make more if we want. At some point, we might have to dig these animals up. We had them laying in the most inopportune location. Marjot seemed to reject that idea, though. So I'm not sure what we would do. Maybe just leave them there. I don't see why a cat needs a human-sized grave, but I'm not going to say too much about it, lest I get yelled at. So I worked on the rice. A boomalope self-tamed around that time. Just came up and started being friendly for no apparent reason. Maybe because there was wildfire raging everywhere. It was a little afraid. Felt like it needed some protection. Either way, he showed up, wanted to hang out. And they're interesting creatures, that's for sure. So for now, despite the fact that it may be a mistake, we decided to let it. Marjot is still researching advanced fabrication. I was working with the game of RimWorld once again. It was time to replant some rice too. Once this cotton comes due, we're going to be done with that. Marjot decided to work on power armor next. If she could get some powered armor for us, we could be nigh on unstoppable. So we'd made great progress. We were feeling a little crabby about sending people on their way, about being wet. But it certainly wasn't the end of the world. Life was alright. We'd work on getting both of ourselves bionicized. Be fast and powerful as could be.